All right, great. Our first question is from Aguascalientes. Go ahead, please. Oh, we have. All right. Okay, very good. Sorry. Let's begin with our question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call and that these questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone numbers or fax which appear on your screen. We remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first question is not actually from Aguascalientes. It's from Cuba. And do you believe that the erosion of the work ethic is a result of the intense competition and pressure to succeed brought about by globalization and the new economy, or is it philosophical or cultural?
I'd begin that by answering that, first of all, I think it's philosophical, and then I would go to the cultural. The reason I would suggest that it's philosophical is that as the younger generations have experienced their parents and have experienced their grandparents and working and the work ethic that they've put in, as well as they see them working very, very hard these days, many of them with two family incomes just to make ends meet, the younger folks are saying, is this all there is? Sort of a phrase that we heard in the 70s, actually. Is this all there is to life? And what can we do that would make our lives more meaningful over time? And so it's been, I think, an issue that they have philosophically come to a conclusion based on their growing up. It's becoming a cultural issue. And you could say that the economy is driving it because of the speed with which things have to be done and the fact that we're using fewer workers to do more work. So you could go to that phrase, but I think that first of all it's going to be philosophical.
Great. Thank you. Our next question is from Mexico, from the Yucatan. Go ahead, please.
Buenos días. Felicidades a todos.
Good morning and greetings from the CTM University from Merida in Yucatan. My question is, currently in underdeveloped countries, the executives are prepared in thinking they are going to earn more income more than in really building a good, solid work ethic and forgetting about foresight. The question is, it would be good to remind them that work is tightly related with happiness and that this is not usually related to this accumulation of wealth without any meaning behind it. So I think it would be good to remind them of that.
Well, it certainly is a good reminder because, in fact, work is part of our lives. We live and we work. And I like to think about people as being people who do something as opposed to people are their work. But work is of value. Work does allow people to live and enjoy their lives. And so I think that it is important for all leaders and managers to recognize that the workers do have ideas. They can contribute in very unique ways. They also have insights as to what is going to work better in the future, so we ought to be listening to them. And if we capture that energy and that spirit, it will feed very well into our becoming successful and remaining successful in the future.
Thank you. Our next question is from Peru. It was faxed in, so I will read it for you. Are the 20 global trends reported by Cetron Davies in their article in the Futurist magazine valid in the year 2005?
Well, actually, there are 50 trends that they've published, okay? And the trends are based, obviously, on historical information, what they've been looking at as key drivers of behaviors in business and in our personal lives, whether it be medical, whether it be educational, whether it be government or business. So as we look at the trends, there's valid information as we think about what we need to do now to prepare for the future. So, for example, if lifelong learning becomes more and more imperative for businesses, and it is, then what are we doing now to adjust our businesses, our financial structures, how we're going to pay for this, how we're going to invest in it, etc., today. And that's what we're doing at Golder, where we're currently looking at things 5 years down the road. What do we have to put in place to make sure that we can be successful?
Excellent. We stay in Peru. We go to Lima for our next question. Go ahead, please.
Sí, buenos días.
Good morning. We're calling from the University Ricardo Palma in Lima, Peru. And our question is the following for Mr. Hoffman. Amongst the global tendencies, how can we have really internet for everyone, especially for, well, poorer countries in Latin America? How can we achieve this?
Well, I'm not sure that I have the technical answer for that. I do believe that one of the things that has allowed the world to come together much more quickly than anticipated is the introduction of wireless technology, so that not only do people they can bypass the wires or the installation or that huge capital investment that many of the developed world put in place years ago. But I would suggest that through that vehicle, that developing countries can leapfrog and move forward much more quickly. So I think it's going to take a concerted effort by governmental leaders that want to ensure that their countries, their societies are connected and have a future. I think it's also going to take a commitment from local government officials, as well as from local businesses, because they need to reach their clients in ways that they haven't in the past, and this is one of the ways of doing so.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if we have a phone call coming in. But okay, we're going to go to the Republic of Dominicana. Go ahead, please.
Buenos días.
Good morning. What do we have to do to have the states, the local governments, and the telecommunications companies and universities, how can we all develop strategic alliances in order to be able to incorporate these new technologies in the human resources aspect, in specializing in people and training them? How can we form these alliances?
Okay, so forming alliances starts with conversation sets. And so I think if you have an idea that would be very beneficial to either your organization as a university or the government or the country, that in fact you articulate it and formulate it in a way that demonstrates the impact that it will have either with the population base or with your particular student body, etc., or ultimately on the economy. If we can start speaking in terms of what it is and what the impacts will be, then we have, I believe, some leverage in entering conversations. But it will take a concerted effort by any one of the three that you mentioned to take leadership. And it is leadership in all of those areas that will make it work ultimately.
Great. Thank you. We go to Mexico for our next question. And the Mexico, go ahead, please.
Gracias. Buenos días.
We're calling from the Tecnológico of Ecatepec. And how can we, in a university, how can we really be with the highest technology in a university, and how can we keep abreast with so many changing steps?
Okay, well, it is a challenge, but interestingly enough, many businesses go to the universities for those ideas. And so you are one of the beds of knowledge or the purveyors of the basic research and knowledge in many of the universities. It is an expensive investment for some of the technologies, and yet on the other hand, the technologies are are coming down in cost so significantly that I think that should not be as much of a barrier in the future as it has been. I also think that one of the things that at least we do in our business is that we very actively work with the universities. And so I would suggest that if you enter into conversation with some of your key local businesses, that in fact you will find them much more interested because you are delivering their future. The students that are coming out of your institutions will be the brain trust from which they are going to be successful.
Great, thank you. We go to Chihuahua, Mexico for our next question. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. Buenos días. We're calling from the Autonomous University from Chihuahua, and our question is, how can we apply these global tendencies in educational institutions?
Okay, well, let's just take the Internet, for example. So how, in fact, are you using the Internet to connect more effectively with your students? Are there ways that you can exchange information and knowledge more freely than you currently are? And I just need to ask questions around that. I think the other thing is that as we think about our educational institutions and we think about the requirement for lifelong learning in organizations because of the lack of folks, how are we instilling that philosophical base within the students so that they recognize that going to the university is just the beginning and it's not an end of their educational process, and that for them to be successful over time, you can set up follow-ups, I believe, with them as students to get them back into the universities for further education, and then strengthen that link even stronger between the universities and business.
Absolutely, yes. And last question for this segment comes from Puebla, Mexico. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm calling from the Technological Institution from the Sierra of Puebla. And my question is, what disadvantages we have while losing our work ethic, and how can we leverage this loss?
I'm not exactly sure I understand the question, but let me attempt to state it this way. The loss of the work ethic is going to vary throughout the world. Okay, so it's going to depend on many cultural influences or dynamics that are occurring in different places. But as the trend is suggesting, is that the ethic is going away in terms of I'm going to sit at my desk for 10 hours a day, or I'm going to labor for 10 or 12 hours a day. What we need to figure out and understand is that the people are willing to work and work very, very hard, but they're willing to work if they see some accomplishment. And accomplishment can be recognized. And so through the use of recognition, which is ultimately a key, people will start feeling that they're valued. I think also it's critically important that people understand how what they contribute or do is connected to the larger picture of either your organization or of the products and services that are being delivered, so that they recognize they are part of the value creation chain. Okay?
Thank you for your insightful responses, and thank you for the questions. Let's now move again to our important messages on the topic of this program.